So when I graduated high school, I didn't realize how much of a safety net I was going to leave. I didn't realize that when I went to college, all of a sudden I was going to be in this world where nobody knew who I was. You see, when I was in high school, I was not the most popular kid in the world, but I had a really good group of friends. I was really involved with the youth group. I knew that I was important. I knew that people valued my person. I knew that people wanted me around and it made me feel good. So when I went to college, I expected that I would be able to find that immediately when I went there. And the reality is that it was way harder to find than I thought it would be. One of the first things that I did when I got to Western Kentucky University was I joined a campus ministry, Christian Student Fellowship. Um, to jump ahead for a second, that ended up being where I spent almost all of my time in college. I loved it. I'm still passionate about that ministry. I love hearing about people that I know getting involved with that ministry. But the reality is that when I first joined it, I didn't feel like I was a part of it. I went with a friend from youth group, my friend Katie, and every time we would be together, it was a good time. But then other people would show up, and all of a sudden I would go from feeling like a friend to the guy who was being introduced to these people at CSF. And then I would quickly I felt like I got pushed out of conversations where I was just this random guy with all these people from CSF. Now, it's nothing that they did wrong. Now, they were great people, and most of those people ended up being really good friends of mine. They'll be lifelong friends that I enjoy catching up with and seeing from time to time. But it didn't change the fact that I felt unwanted. I felt unimportant when I was there. I remember I went on a retreat with them, and I, at one point during the retreat, thought, if I were to leave, if I were to just get in my car and head out, would anybody even notice that I'm gone? Would anybody notice that I'd left? Did anybody even know that I was there to begin with? And I struggled with those feelings for quite some time. Now, eventually it changed, and eventually I started to kind of acclimate and get to know these people, and I realized that I was kind of a new person that none of them had met, and I was very introverted. I didn't really realize how introverted I was until I got to college. But eventually things worked out, and it became an important part of my life. But I can just remember thinking those questions when I was there. Questions like, does it even matter if I'm here? Does anyone care what I think or how I feel? Does anybody notice what I have to say? I think a lot of us have felt that way. Maybe we felt that way a lot during this pandemic where our presence hasn't been as noticeable. You guys have spent almost a year in school on Zoom classes where you maybe use your camera, maybe don't. But it begs that question of if your camera's not on, people don't even know whether you're there or not, do you feel important? Do you feel like you matter to that conversation? I think it's something that we often struggle with, this idea of do we matter? Are we important to somebody? We're going to look back in Scripture at a story that is somewhat similar to ours. Now, there's some details in it that we probably can't really connect with, but it's similar. There's a character in the Bible, her name is Mary. Now, there's a lot of Marys, it gets kind of confusing. It was one of the most popular names at the time, but the Mary that we're going to talk about is often referred to as Mary Magdalene. So Mary Magdalene was, first of all, obviously a woman. She was in that time as a woman, which means that she wasn't necessarily valued. She was probably overlooked oftentimes. Her opinion didn't matter, and that's just because that's how the times were back then. But also, in the book of Luke, we learn a little bit about Mary. We don't have a ton of her backstory, but we do know that she was somebody who was kind of possessed by evil spirits, and those evil spirits had been cast out. But somebody like that, first of all, a woman in that culture, but also somebody who was tainted by something like that, would have been seen as incredibly unimportant. It's really easy when you read the New Testament to think that really the only people that truly mattered were Jesus and his disciples. We see them all over the place. But the reality is that Mary becomes one of the most important people in the New Testament that we often overlook. All four Gospels record that Mary Magdalene was there when Jesus was put on the cross. 3 of the 4 Gospels say that she was there at Jesus' burial, and all 4 of the Gospels say that she was the first to see Jesus resurrected. Now, this is somebody who wouldn't have had much value at the time, and like I said, was probably even less respected because of some things that occurred in her past. So it seems like she's not a major player in the story, but she is. Now, the Gospel of John, which was written by another one of Jesus' disciples, we read out of that quite often, records that while it was still dark, Mary got up and went to the tomb. Now, first you have to know that Mary was there for the crucifixion. She was there for the death of Jesus. She was there for the burial of Jesus. And now it's dark and she's going to the tomb. But when she gets there, the stone in front of the tomb has been rolled away. Now, I doubt that Mary immediately thought, well, of course he's gone. Jesus is alive. No, she assumed that someone messed with the grave and took the body. So she goes straight to Peter and another disciple to tell them, and they run to the tomb, and sure enough, the tomb is empty. The stone is rolled away, and Jesus is gone. All that's left are the clothes that he was wearing when he was buried. Now, the other disciples go off to tell other people, but Mary stays there. It's as if her sadness kept her there in a way. And as if sadness of losing a friend wasn't enough, now she thinks that somebody has tampered with him. She thinks that he's been taking, and she's distressed by this. Here's what John writes. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they've put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it that you're looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." And Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord," and she told them that he had said these things to her. So on the day that Jesus defeats death, on this day that he's resurrected, the first person who's there to see it is Mary. The first person that is given a task of go and tell these people is Mary. So a woman who would not have been seen as a reliable witness. She couldn't testify in court. Her word was not to be trusted, especially over a man's. Yet over and over again in the gospel, at the cross, at the tomb, and on Easter morning, it was a woman who saw Jesus, who recognized him, and who was given the job of telling others. When the rest of the world saw women as unreliable, inferior, and untrustworthy, Jesus saw something different. He valued them and elevated them, even when the rest of the world didn't. Jesus made a really important decision, and that was to trust Mary. To say, you are important, you are valued, you are somebody who I want to give this information to so that you can go and tell other people. That's an incredible thing that would have made Mary realize something very important. In a world where she did not matter to most people, Jesus changed that. Because of the resurrection, Mary knew that she mattered. Because of the resurrection, Mary knew that she was a valuable piece of the story of Christ. She knew that she was important to God. Now, something that we celebrate 2,000 years later, the day that changed the world, Easter morning, changed the lives of people then, and it's continuing to change the lives of people now. Because the reality is, just like Mary mattered to Jesus, so do you. The sacrifice that Jesus made for Mary, for the disciples of the time, for the people of the time, was the same sacrifice that he made for you and I today. When he said her name, he said your name too. He said the name of people who were overlooked, who were unseen, and who were forgotten. He said the name of people who feel like their part of the story doesn't matter. Jesus died so that we can all have salvation. Jesus died so that we can all live in eternity with God. It's not something that he only did for people who were seen as important during the time and people who were seen as important now. He did it for everybody. So because of Easter, because of the resurrection, Mary knew that she mattered, and we can know that we matter as well. Now, I want to close with a couple of questions, and I want you to think about it. So if you're watching this video, I encourage you to maybe hear one of the questions and then pause it and just reflect on it. Maybe you hear them all and then just do some thinking later. But I think that these questions are important because I think we struggle with this. So the first question, do you believe that you matter? Do you treat yourself like you matter? Do you allow other people to treat you as if you don't matter? Do you treat others as if they matter? Are there people you treat like they matter more? Are there people you treat like they don't matter at all? And the last one, what would it look like if you started treating yourself and others like Jesus did, like they matter, starting today? What would change in your life if you were to ask yourself those questions and really reflect on them and think about that? Jesus made it obvious that we matter to him, that we are important to him, and that he loves us. Now we have to go and do the same thing for other people. So this Easter, this season where we celebrate this resurrection, what can you do to teach people, to share this love, to convince other people that they matter, that they are valued, that they are important to God, and that they're important to you? And if you need to feel this way, how can you convince yourself of that? I encourage you to talk to people. We have small groups every Sunday nights. We have another small group now on Wednesday nights where we dig a little deeper into this. So I really encourage you, if you're struggling with this, if this is new to you, if you have questions, try your best to come and see us. You can always email me. You can always send me messages, and I'll try my best to answer those things. I know that distancing makes things a little weird, but I really encourage you to just take everything that you've heard today and try to apply it to your life. And if nothing else, believe that you matter to God. Have a wonderful week, everyone.